Black Stickman Khan, Black Gem Bonder, barbaric DNA infused, 16 years old, leader, stick hero number 1 and an axe wielder. The story takes place in the year 1769 AD, where he was born originally in a barbarian tribe, full of black barbarian warriors that hope one day to conquer every other tribe in their universe. When he first saw them in action, he just wanted to be like one of them. Black got inspired from watching the black barbarians train and fight. At one point, he begged his dad to already make him a barbarian, but unfortunately when he got a rejection, Black himself went through a physical test he made on his own to improve his skills. Here's a list of things Black did in his training: rock climbing, axe wielding, rock punching, and finally a mile sprint across the field. When his dad saw that his son was training, he decided to make him a barbarian. Fortunately, they all had to prepare for an attack on the first region, which is tomorrow, and Bach wanted to be the general of the barbaric tribe. When they were ready, the army launched a full-on attack on the native Red Stickmans. Somehow, one of the Reds snuck inside the castle and assassinated the king, Black's father. When Black was the general of the army, he kept attacking and attacking until all the Reds were defeated. He tells the army to head back to the castle. When they went back inside, they saw their king lying on the ground. Black was crying out of anxiousness about his father's death. His father said one last line to his special son, before his last breath. He said to him that he was about to die and he must take his place as the new king of the tribe. After that he passed on the ground. The army gathered around his funeral to honor him. Black's father reigned for 35 years. The first thing they did was carry his casket. Also Black volunteered to carry it to the burial ground. Once it was dropped in there, some of the black soldiers began pouring dirt over it. After the death, the soldiers began wondering who will be the new leader. One day, Black decided to take action after his father's death and announced that he was going to be the new king of the barbarian tribe, and every soldier was very interested in that idea. 8 years later, he became the new king of the barbarian tribe after it has been declared. He grabbed his crown from his throne chair and started commanding training sessions for battles against the Red Stickman natives. While they were training, Black goes to the basement of the castle to see all of his father's historical pictures of fights and victories. He also went to see the legendary Black Knight statue his dad and the troops carved. He always felt like it represents who he really is now and how brave of a warrior also how he is. After seeing it, Black suddenly wanted to take apart the statue and examine it. He then discovered a hidden black gem inside. It was glowing, full of spiritual powers beyond even the wildest dreams. But when he touched it, his body felt a very strong bond with the gem, and suddenly much more powerful than he was with his training. When he went to his training area, he was fast through the rock climbing, able to cut through rocks with his father's legendary axe in half, and finally, whenever he was in danger of falling in battle, the black gem would always give him this last desperate chance to draw a secret power within him, that turns the tables instantly. The power of the black gem just seemed easy for Black himself to wield, and he also wanted his tribe to take over other tribes because it'll make him a true king. Thanks to the gem power, the barbarian tribe became very successful in defeating every other tribe and claiming it as theirs. But before they could start celebrating their big victories, the gem spoke to Black about his future joining a real team with 3 other stickmen. After hearing that, he sadly announces to his team that he will leave the barbarian tribe to join the new team. But he also says that he'll come to visit anytime because he happened to know that the gem itself can travel to any place, to the real universe, game universe, and even Roblox universe. So after bidding farewell to his tribe, the black gem warps him to an unknown blue coding background space, so that would be his waiting spot for the other stickmen to arrive. But until they come, the story is to be continued. Red Stickman Khan, Red Gem Bonder, Volcano DNA infused, 15 years old, stick hero number 2 and a sword wielder. Red was born around 1515 AD, which the year references 1500 BC in honor of the first ever volcano eruption, and the other 15 is his current age. To begin this story, the way he was born is very unnatural. He came alive to Earth from a meteor. Until it became a meteor, it was originally an asteroid far away 200 miles away from Earth, and was clustered with other asteroids. But suddenly came a speeding out of control rocket that separated the asteroids. That separation then made every asteroid into a flaming crashing meteorite. The meteor crashed onto 3 volcanoes 28 feet away from each other. This place was called Vulcan Prism. It also immediately cracked open, so that Red came out of it as a baby. He also had a passion for ascending eruptions happening. The wave that volcanoes erupt, any style, and strength. Every time he ascended one by one, Red got inspired by wanting to try to get a fragment of power from them. By the time he grew 8 years old, he wanted to try that out exactly. Red went to the rounded edge platform closer to Volcano's magma, to try dipping his hand in the magma to see if he could get a fragment piece, but instead, he got some weirdly shaped crystal piece that was red colored. He kept trying, and all he got were more red crystal pieces. Red seemed unfamiliar with this type of thing. He must have thought this was some puzzle to figure out. When he tried putting the pieces together, it forged the red gem. After completing it, the red gem shared a huge bond with Red, giving him insane powers of the Vulcan Prism and shield volcanoes. First, it gave him a volcanic outburst ability. Similar to Black Panther's, every hit Red takes allows his body to grow lava inside. When he takes enough damage during a battle, the enemy's attack then becomes Red's with 3 times much more force. The more powerful the hit, the more dangerous Red's counter becomes. Second ability is fireball shots. While Red wields his sword, he can shoot fireballs out of it. But the problem with this attack is that it deals less damage due to his defense passiveness. The third ability is Flame Slash using the flame blade. Just like the second, not so powerful, but it can set the enemy on fire for 4 seconds. And finally, the fourth last one is Shielded Sword. Red can block, negate, parry, cancel an attack while his sword's on fire. 7 years later, after claiming the power of the red gem, he started to get used to it. Red can prevent invaders from destroying the Vulcan Prism volcanoes to keep his homeland state alive. Until one fateful day, a gigantic tsunami was approaching that could wipe out the Vulcan Prism. Red tried everything he could to stop the wave, but it wasn't enough. The volcanic outburst ability did not affect the tsunami, and every other lava attack was at a disadvantage due to water cooling off the lava. So Red tried digging deep and used up all the lava from the Vulcan Prism to convert it into a huge fireball. Which one won? They tied. But it would technically be Fireball's victory because it stopped the tsunami completely and the water turned into coal. When Red looked at the halted wave, he seemed to have some sort of idea. He wanted to use the coal to restore the Vulcan Prism volcanoes. So he divided the coal wave into thirds, giving each volcano an equal amount of lava. After restoring the volcanoes, the gem spoke to Red that he had what it takes to restore broken puzzles and fix them into a future living for people. And it also said about joining a team that's a quarter Stickman team. So when he heard that, Red decided to give a farewell to his homeland and its ancestors he'll visit again anytime. The gem showed a teleportation portal for Red to enter through to travel 500 years into the future and the coded space background where Black is. The moment Red entered in, Black immediately charged at him with his axe, thinking he was a native Red. Black was easily stopped by him with just his hand, which relates to that one knuckle scene in Sonic 2. With defense having an advantage over attack like in Beyblade, Red flung Black's axe in the air, which dropped to the ground, and he also outbursted Black away. Red wanted to explain he wasn't a native, he was just born in a meteor and grew old to be a freedom fighter. After Black heard that, he trusted Red into joining the team and both were still left in the background. Until the other two came, the story is to be continued. Light Blue Stickman Khan, Light Blue Gem Bonder, Vampire DNA infused, 18 years old, Stick Hero number 3 and a spear wielder. All vampire lives begin in a very way as poetic speakers in poems, but Light Blue's is no different. He was born in Transylvania state in 1975 to a family of vampires who died soon when Light Blue grew 4 years, and ever since that happened, he was an early orphan. Light Blue had always been worried about having no one to look over him whenever he was eating, or sleeping, and glancing at the sky. He did it all alone at the orphanage. At one point, when at 11 years old, Light Blue had something come to his mind, his parents' death. He believed a murderer committed it. Or was it a random terrible disease that caused their deaths? Light Blue had no idea about deciphering what happened, so he transformed into a bat and flew back to his homeland to search for answers and evidence, asking a bunch of other vampires, and yes, even the Grim Reaper himself, the only one that had the thoughts to his issue. At the graveyard, he pointed toward Light Blue's family gravestones. When Light Blue immediately saw them both, he burst into tears and started softly whimpering. But then, out of nowhere, the Grim Reaper opened secret passage stairs to the caskets. He was shocked to know that his family's funeral was this special. So Light Blue followed the Grim Reaper to the secret passage, where both saw lying 2 caskets with portraits, full names, and birth to death years. Also, 2 spears were laying on top of their caskets, which helped regain a bit of Light Blue's birth memory. He thought his parents were fighting a horde of enemies off for the protection of all of his homeland, but that wasn't all. The Grim Reaper later showed a vision of what exactly happened right after Light Blue's birth. There were flying salamanders invading all of Transylvania, burning down houses, killing vampires. or even kidnapping them to their secret lair where they gain energy by chaining their bodies onto a piece of lumber and making vampires stare into a bright light sun orb shard, a gem that is capable of burning vampire into dust and ashes, which they use the ashes and dust to transfer it to their fallen leader, the Avillamander. They only found a piece of it, but with 3 more pieces and enough ashes and dust from vampires, it will be fully resurrected and possibly destroy the island in one blow. After all that watching, Light Blue was surprised and scared of what will have become of the island if it was destroyed by the Avillamander. But also, he felt like something was missing in the vision, his parents. He asked the Grim Reaper about his parents. So the Grim Reaper showed another vision, but this time only where it showed parts of his family and Light Blue's birth. The father was fighting off the salamanders by impaling and piercing them with his sharp bat claws, while the mother tried to get the baby into a very safe place by flying to a faraway place where he couldn't be found, but was spotted by salamanders. So she tried evading them, but unfortunately, failing to do so, one tooth of salamander mythology was caught in her vampire wing, which became disabled, unable to fly, and ran on foot instead. The mother couldn't find anywhere to hide the baby, so she took him to a random orphanage nearby and hoped it was the right thing to do. The mother tried running back as fast as she could to help his father but tripped on a twig and broke her ankle, which made the salamanders openly kidnap her, absorb her power, and later died before she ever got to see what their plan was. While the father was just by himself fighting all salamanders that dared come to him, he also died after being overwhelmed by too many salamanders biting him and absorbing his power to their leader. And Light Blue is just left alone at the orphanage with no one to look after him. Light Blue was infuriated after seeing what happened to him, so he vowed revenge against the Avillamander and kill every last salamander until all of them dead. But the Grim Reaper immediately stopped him and convinced Light Blue to figure out how to fight them. Light Blue wasn't following what the Grim Reaper said, so he left the secret passage and Light Blue followed him a long way somewhere, to an old, half-burnt Japanese dojo that is just 2 miles away from his orphanage, and there they found it. He had a puzzled look at what he was going to use to fight the salamanders, but the Grim Reaper had an idea. He told Light Blue to wait in the dojo while the Grim Reaper went to get his weapon. Light Blue took a look around the dojo while he was waiting. It was filled with pillars of Japanese symbols, weapons, training dummies, and kung fu uniforms. It also reminded him of memories when he used to stare out the window of the orphanage at that dojo, where he used to watch tournaments and training sections when he had nothing to do. But the Grim Reaper came back a few minutes later and gave Light Blue his weapon, a spear. And this spear seemed to be special because the tip of it had a resemblance to his family's vampire bat claws on it. He immediately snatched it out of the bone hands and read to give it a try, so the Grim Reaper pointed at the training dummies and Light Blue impaired one on the head with the tip of the spear. It exploded all of the wool of it and Light Blue looked at the spear having extreme power. Now Grim Reaper point toward the next one, but this time he took the spear from him and wanted Light Blue to defeat it using only his vampire combat ability. He wanted to use them but was unable to since he's too young to get adaptive with vampire attributes. So the Grim Reaper gave him a shining light blue gem, which sent Light Blue jaw-dropping to next year. With one single grasp of it, Light Blue floated in the air by flapping his bat wings and rushed at it and cut the dummy's body in half with his claw. So Light Blue felt very excited about this power, so he continued to do this training until he was ready. For the next 7 years, he was doing this training and eventually became a godlike vampire at age 18. Also, along with Light Blue's 7 years of training, the Grim Reaper kept his homeland safe by fending off salamanders with his trusty scythe. Half vampires were saved, but half lost their lives. And finally, the next day when Light Blue woke up, all the training equipment was removed by the Grim Reaper, as if Light Blue anticipated he has done enough training to be ready. So Light Blue went toward the roof of the dojo, opened his wings, and flew to the forest, where his mother died, because he had slight memory that this is where they went to steal vampires' power and life. The Grim Reaper spirited traveled to him along the way and flew 5 minutes through the forest to a cave, which is the salamander's lair. Light Blue was about to enter in, but the Grim Reaper wanted to show him an easy special ability he unlocked that can be used by almost any adult vampire. He opened his mouth up and noticed 2 long fangs were bright white that Light Blue can use to bite and suck the life energy, or blood even, out of living things. So when he discovered this ability, the Grim Reaper pointed toward an angry bear that kept growling at Light Blue, to test his ability. So Light Blue ran toward it, and tried to claw swipe him but missed, and Light Blue took a massive bite like he was eating a Thanksgiving turkey wing. Absorbing a lot of energy, the bear passed away and whited out. And at this point, the Grim Reaper told Light Blue that he was on his own, and the Grim Reaper's assistance ended there. He vanished into thin air and left his robe lying in the grass. Without further ado, Light Blue entered the cave and fought his way to the captivity room. He pierced, claw-slashed, and absorbed through salamanders. He was near the captivity room, but a bunch of salamander tanks blocked his path. They were tough to fight since they are heavier and bigger than regular ones. He tried using his spear and claws, but he couldn't put a scratch on them, so he tried his best ability. He was grabbing lots of blood and energy from them, with all of the power flowing through his veins, and now was considerably ready to take down the Avillamander. Light Blue entered that captivity room and saw lots of stick vampires' bones and skulls lying around the room. Meanwhile, the Avillamander was sitting in his throne chair as if he was already resurrected 7 years ago. He gave a menacingly laugh and look as he stood up. The Avillamander gave Light Blue credit for coming all the way here just to kill him, and without any response from Light Blue, he suddenly raised his spear against him. The Avillamander didn't even flinch and wanted to respond to him back by pulling his maroon glowing scimitar, and he said, "Oh, so that's how it is? Very well then, him that he will regret messing with him and his salamander clan." The two weapons clashed and the battle has begun. Light Blue tries to fly and rush onto him, but with a slight evasion from Avillamander, he instead crashed into a wall and Avillamander laughed at him. Next, he decided to make his move and slashed Light Blue, but was blocked by his spear. He tried to push him back and completely cancelled out Avillamander's attack. The clashing and intensifying battle seems at stake with neither one back down. At one point Light Blue tried to go for it again, but this time with the Avillamander expecting it, ran and jumped, slicing his body and leaving a scar on Light Blue's stomach. He fell to the ground and was struggling to get up. Avillamander taunted him further by stepping on his body and trying to make him give up and admit defeat, but Light Blue had an extra trick up his sleeve. He purposely admitted he was defeated by him, and while Avillamander did his long evil laugh, he concentrated all of the absorbed power and did a huge outburst of the explosion that filled the cave with a bright blue pillar. Avillamander was shocked to not see that coming. Every salamander in the cave died and all vampire power-stealing equipment was obliterated. Also, Avillamander was blown 80 miles away from Transylvania and was never heard of again. But was that all? Light Blue thought he finally won and avenged his family. Out of the blue, a random purple pillar is released from Avillamander's body and is resurrected twice. But this time he turned into a giant, laughed hard, and said to Light Blue, "Did you think I was gone? How foolish. We still have more fighting to do, so get ready." He dodges the huge hand grab Avillamander goes for, then flies and tries to impale his eye, but was blown away by his hand. He next tries to take a bite out of his neck, and he was absorbing a lot of power, but he was absorbing too much for him to hold and stop biting him. Then he did his special attack again. But first, Light Blue held giant Avillamander in place with spiritual chains, 2 on his legs, 2 on his arms, and 1 on his head. Using all the absorbed power he got from the huge bite, he flew back to his starting to make the ultimate blow. He went to his house and flew to his forehead, carrying the family's legacy. After making the huge blow, he exploded and for real this time was defeated. Light Blue was panting and fell to the ground unconscious. He passed out for a few minutes and yelled to the sky that he had finally won. Before he could celebrate his victory, Light Blue left the cave. He took all the bones from the captivity room and dug them into the graves and lanes, which took a long time but paid off for the Grim Reaper. And after he went back to Transylvania and tell every about his historical victory against the great Avillamander. They celebrate with a party and cheers to the entire hero of their city, Light Blue. But also the light blue gem was glowing at a point after a bunch of minutes, and Spoke told him that he had what it takes to protect thoroughly those in need and avenge one for a correctly serious reason. It opened a portal for him to enter a team of stickmen, and before he left, he said to his fellow vampires that he's sadly leaving to join a team, but come back to visit any time. So he threw the portal and jumped ahead around 44 years in time, to a blank canvas with other 2 stickmen, Black and Red. They were suspicious of who this stickman was, but they considered him to be one of them, so they said to him they give him an entrance exam to see if he was capable of joining the team. So Light Blue began the fight by impaling down Black with his spear, but he also got some powerful cuts in on Light Blue and later healed them by absorbing HP from Red. Red tried to flame slash him, but his power was drained, and couldn't do any fire moves at all. So Light Blue claw slashed him, but Red didn't flinch and the marks are left on his body. He gave up. Black tried to go once more with a powerful cut and Light Blue blocked it with his spear, but couldn't hold it for much longer as it was about to get sliced in half. Light Blue kicked Black down and his spear almost got cut in half. They wanted an explanation of his backstory, and Light Blue explained that he was a stick vampire, avenging his family, and defeating his enemies. He became the official 3rd member. Now that there were 3 of them, all they need is 1 more member, and then they're all set. But until the 4th came, the story is to be continued. Magenta Stickman Magenta Gem Bonder, Scientist DNA infused, 14 years old, Stick Hero number 4 and a staff wielder. An eon-long path to becoming a true genius or scientist takes lots of knowledge and even solving the hardest of problems. The path to math, mythology, astrology, science, etc. And a big brain is required to do that. It would just need a normal medium-sized brain to think the question through. Using your resources is also a key part of the question. The answer comes from the stick woman, Magenta. She was born in 2000, it's a year, not a number, to a family of stick scientists, and had the passive ability to be a human calculator at the time. When the parents first saw the newborn, they named her Magenta, a color close to pink, and the human brain. Through the years of growing up, she has been experiencing the world through God, equations, science, and power. They were amazed at how much she could do, so they sent her to school, powering up Magenta's knowledge even further. Passing all classes with straight A's throughout elementary and middle, she seemed like the popular kid at the time. After the parents started noticing her great success, they became so surprised, jaw-dropping on the floor, and immediately signed her up for college. But it didn't end there. As for a Christmas gift, the stick scientist parents built her very own science lab filled with stick and robo-scientists with testing chambers, DNA chambers, science glass bottles, couples of bedrooms, and all sorts of stuff. Magenta was crying tears of joy and rushed to hug her parents for giving her this. She enjoyed it for months, and never seemed to leave the place. She even wanted it to be her own home. When college came up, she usually was doing well, but the worst part was her getting harassed by other students. The college staff did everything they could to protect her, and it worked out all right. She also was getting the attention of other genius people in the college who wanted to invite her to their club and be friends with them. Magenta accepted and said that she wanted to give them a tour of her laboratory, which left them shocked as well. But before doing that, she needed permission from her parents. She went to her parents' home and asked them to see if they wanted to let her college club come and visit her laboratory. They agreed and pleaded with a thank you, as she left. At around 5 in the evening, there were cars parked at the laboratory's entrance. As the college club visited the place, they recorded notes of everything and action of what the scientists did, combing chemicals, matching equations to periodic table elements, and DNA tests. They left a 10/10 rating at her laboratory and with more visits every day because she even made her home public to anyone and made a rating machine toward the exit. Her laboratory was on the news that night. When a news reporter asked Magenta what path would rarely be recommended for other scientists to take, she quoted, "When your brain grows, it just becomes a part of your body. It doesn't become all that smart firsthand, but it's a flower-growing path to being a true genius. You begin planting the seeds by absorbing knowledge from watching educational TV, reading 100-plus page books, and thinking back on your life activities and the true purpose of doing them. Next, you water them by doing good in school, finding random news articles, and even sleeping. Sleeping is what freshens seeds in your mind entirely as you soak in thoughts of your IQ in such subjective cases. And finally, growing the flower. Praising God for everything He's done to make your life better, increasing knowledge and scholarship even further, and eventually becoming more of a legend of your parallel growth to the success of your favoritism on what you like to do. As the plant grows, so does your life." That was a lot of talking she did, and nearly was out of breath saying that long quote. After the news broadcast, Magenta marked the long quote on the side wall near the chamber room. She went straight to sleep at night. The next day was a very fateful one. At noon, Magenta was writing her creative equations as usual, but until an unveiling, a moving shadow aura flew around the entire stick scientist room and turned it into pure darkness. A few stick scientists and robo-scientists were held against their will, switching into evil versions of themselves, and destroying most of their clones. She was shocked by what noises she heard and went out of her room to check it out. And what she saw was a fight between shadow-infested scientists and regularly created scientists. Magenta couldn't believe her eyes as she tried wiping them, and the battle was still going. She went to call her parents on her cell phone, but they mysteriously didn't answer. Could their phones have run out of battery, kidnapped, or even killed? She went to her parents' house and was surprised to see that her parents were lying on the ground with wounds on them. Magenta tried getting both of them to answer and talked about what caused it. The mother said that both she and dad created an experimental aura for purposely cleaning washing house titles. But the dad also said that there was a weird purple water droplet entering the chamber and that caused it to run wild. It was filling their house with complete shadows and fractured bruises on her parents before it left the house. And before they passed away, the parents said one last thing to Magenta: "You must stop it from covering the world in shadows," the father said. She promised him to stop it at any cost. Also, the mother added, "And before you go, there are other family members of the stick scientist that existed long before you. Their names are Silver and Gold. Soon after that, they fell dead." She had beads of tears coming out of her eyes and falling on their shadowed wood title. After minutes of crying, she headed back to her laboratory as quickly as possible and saw that half of the laboratories destroyed, but some stuff remained and some of the scientists survived. She immediately ordered them to track down the aura's location and notify her when they found it. As Magenta was walking back to her room, she got blinded by a bright magenta light. She was surprised to see that a magenta gem had been on her shelf along with her other experiments. When she tried grabbing it, the gem spoke to her about an upcoming evil in her universe and that she had to stop it. It later then started surging its powers through her body, making Magenta both a physical and mental stick scientist to be reckoned with. The gem spawned a lighting splintered staff in her hand, which can be used to fire 5 lightning ball shots in separate succession, and as a melee weapon. She wanted to test it out, so she went into the chamber room and set up the holographic dummies. She tried using her staff the melee way and got it paralyzed, unable to move for a bit. Next, she tried using it the ranged way. Magenta fired 5 lighting shots in succession. She also discovered that in addition, each shot could hit up to 2 enemies, which technically meant that it could hit up to 10 times. And finally, she could use it to do a ground pound that can spread electric cracks on the ground, and anyone near it takes massive damage. That is a powerful move. However, it needed enough power to execute perfectly. When she finished training, she went back to the main room and checked on the whereabouts of the Shadow Aura. Seconds later, stick scientists might have found him at a warehouse. Magenta told them to prepare the army until there were approximately a quarter of soldiers ready for battle. And after preparing for the quarter, they went to a truck that was earlier secretly stored by her parents. They filled it with many stick and robo-scientists, and a stick scientist as its driver. So Magenta entered the back of the truck and hoped for the best. As they approached the warehouse, she immediately escaped the truck and threw a bomb at the entrance to dispel any laid traps. When they crossed eyes, the battle instantly began. While the normal and shadowed stick scientists and robo-scientists were at war, Magenta wanted to go after the main enemy. So when she tried fighting her way to the generator and finally reached the Shadow Aura, she instantly charges at it without question, but the aura evades. Then it tried to attack her, but Magenta released a lighting shot at the last second and drove it back. She still noticed the main thing in front of her to destroy, the generator. As she tried lunging at it, blocked by a force field set by the Shadow Aura, and that would only break once the owner disables it or something. She found that was the case, so she kept firing lighting shots at the Shadow Aura, without missing a single shot, until it gradually became a piece of pure dust. And after it vanished, the force field disappeared, in which she decided to concentrate her gem and weapon power for one final attack. As Magenta was powering up her strike, she was thinking about her path to becoming a true genius and her family's legacy. And with one final blow, it was finally destroyed, and everyone in the universe turned back to normal. The stick and robo-scientist went back to their normal selves, and they left Magenta behind. She follows them back eventually after passing out on the floor for a few minutes to dodge a couple of attacks and fire many shots. Instead and following back, the gem teleported her back to the lab. Magenta noticed as she woke up at her half-destroyed lab. Then, the gem finally called out to her to join the team for her use of academics, equations, and protection cause. She was determined to join, but before leaving, she told her laboratory creations that she'll be sadly headed off to the team but may return at any point if she felt like it. As the stick and robo-scientists were rebuilding the lab, Magenta used the gem's power to summon a portal in front of her to the Stickman team's dimension. She warped straight to the future, where she found 3 other stickmen. Black, red, and light blue noticed a magenta portal come through their dimension, saw Magenta, and all unanimously thought of her as their 4th and final member. Finally, the team was complete as they were waiting for their first enemy, which was canonically how their first PowerPoint animation battle created. But still, Magenta was thinking about her mother's words about silver and gold being secret family members. Are they real or not?